You are listening to the Garlic Fries and Baseball Guys podcast. Sam Lubin and Joe Shasky coming at you every week as often as we can with all the best Giants content out there. Make sure you're liking, reviewing, rating, subscribing, sharing, telling the entire world to listen to this podcast, part of the Odyssey Sports Network here at 95.7 The Game. Bruce Bochy did make his return, long-awaited return to Oracle Park this past weekend, and it was they gave him a nice little tribute before the game. He goes able to catch up with Brandon Crawford, saw him chatting with Ron Wotus. It was really cool having Bruce Bochy back in the ballpark. Seeing him in that Ranger blue, though, it was really weird. Shasky, what were your emotions when you saw Bochy on TV wearing that Texas Rangers hat?
There's a lot of emotions. No, I don't think he should be coaching or managing the Giants right now, though. I think he needed that time off. I do. I think he needed that time off. I think the time had run its course. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people talk about, Jimmy Johnson leaving early, Bill Walsh leaving early, and Bruce Bochy kind of admitted he needed to hit the reset, and then he missed it again. I think all of us can relate to that in different life settings, whether it's work, whether it's a relationship. We've all needed to hit pause, take a deep breath, and then go back at it. I mean, he was there for 15 years prior, essentially. I mean, a long run.
He had a great run. No, he did.
He acted like he was only there like 7 or 8 years. And I also think that this is my bigger takeaway. I thought he outmanaged Gabe Kapler and Farhan at times, and I thought he was
absolutely, especially on Saturday night when he pulled Heaney after an inning and 2/3 or whatever. That got absolutely flummoxed the Giants basically at their own game.
It reminded me a lot of the playoffs in 2021 when the Dodgers were trying to force the Giants' hands into matchups and burning players that they don't want to burn or using them against a guy that they don't want to use. Old school baseball is always going to be around. The game's old. I know we want to get into the advanced analytics and the new ways to play and blah, 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 blah. The game's 200 years old, and some of the old school methodology still works. Not all of it. I'm not here to say that all of it works, because some things do get extinct and evolve differently. But man, my bigger takeaway was that Bochy's going to be a factor in the playoffs, dude.
Oh,
that
yeah,
team
absolutely.
is stacked.
I want to touch on that, but first I want to get into the whole whether or not he should have left argument, because I am in agreement with you. I think and you and I kind of had this discussion last year. I remember you asked me, you couldn't find a way to make it work with Bruce Bochy if you're Farhan Zaidi. And for a while, I kind of disagreed with that. But first off, I remember just at the end of 2018, just for fun over the weekend, I kind of looked at some of the offensive numbers that teams put up in 2018, and the Giants were in a different universe with in terms of what they were doing offensively. It was the home run leader for the 2018 Giants was Evan Longoria with 16. Gorkys Hernandez was number 2 at 15. This was the year when everybody had 2, 3, 4, 20 home run guys. Everyone had a 30 home run guy.
Isn't it ironic? Because right now, I think the Giants, and we're in the middle of August. What's their leader? 15?
Something like that. Yeah, looking very 2018-like. So that's not a good sign. But it's watching the Giants back in 2018. I mean, this wasn't a case of they're playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. This is the Giants are, the rest of the league's playing chess and the Giants are playing Parcheesi or something like that. They just looked like they did not fit in with the rest of Major League Baseball. And yeah, I think you needed a change. They needed to hit a fresh reset and go in a completely different direction. And I always point out what Larry Bear said about finding that next gen thinking general manager. And moving off of Sabian Evans, it made sense at the time. The whole theory, and there's a lot of people who still believe this for some reason, that Larry brought in Farhan, and then Farhan just forced Bruce Bochy out. I don't think there's any evidence that supports that. I think it was just we were in a situation where the game, I think, was changing. Bochy, I felt, was maybe running out of gas, and it was the last year of his contract. They could have either unceremoniously fired him like they did with Brian Sabian or Bobby Evans, or, it's hey, this is a natural stopping point, and this seems like a good time for maybe to get off. Shasky, at the All-Star break in 2016, remember that Sunday night before the All-Star game, July 10th, Madison Bumgarner took the mound against the Diamondbacks on Sunday Night Baseball and put on just an absolute show. Giants were 57-33 at that time, best record in baseball. Since then, the 2.5 years that followed, they were 167-229. They were really, really bad.
Is that on Boch or is that on Sabian and Evans?
I think it's just a collective. It's a collective there.
Okay.
I think you kind of all three of them. There was a lot of just, I think one of the reasons maybe the Giants were reluctant to try and do a rebuild with Bochy is Bochy kind of had a reputation of being loyal to his guys. I remember when Bochy
did they even do a rebuild? Like, honestly,
sort of yes and no. But
okay.
I remember when Bochy first came here in 2007, a lot of fans weren't on board with him because they wanted to see young guys.
Yeah, it was
and instead
a
he's
retread
throwing,
hire.
we wanted to see, Nate Scherholtz in right field, not Randy Wynn. We want to see Dan Ortmeyer at first base, not
Lance
Ryan Klesko, or Lance Niekro or whoever. So
Emmanuel Burris.
And yeah, it took fans a while to embrace Bruce Bochy as well. And I think it was just a situation where you have a new guy coming in, a new philosophy. It just made sense to move off of him. The moment I'll always remember, it was late in 2019. I forget who they were playing, but the Giants were down like a run or so in the 8th inning. And Brandon Crawford stepped to the plate against a left-handed reliever. And I'm just thinking, oh man, I can't wait for next year when we don't have to deal with this anymore. Because I was just so tired of seeing guys like Brandon Crawford and Brandon Belt coming up in the 8th inning against a lefty and Bochy still trying to run with them. Well, it's like, no, why don't we bring some righty off the bench and try and get a better matchup? Because that's what other teams are doing. And I was just so done with that. It hurt me to think that, because this is, my manager here, but it was just like one of those moments where it's just like, Bruce, I love you. It's just time.
Is there any way in your mind you could see him staying with the Texas Rangers longer than he was with the Giants?
I mean, he's 68 right now. And so that would be 13, 14 years. I mean, that would take him up to age 80 if he did
Jack
that long.
Won a ring late in his life.
I mean, again,
I'm just asking.
No, I mean, I think one of the reasons why Bochy needed to take time off was obviously, we talked about his heart. I mean, dude had 3 stents put into his heart in the last few years. And I mean, keep in mind the kind of games that he had to manage with the Giants. The Rangers, I mean, this is something I asked him about on Friday. I said, when you were with the Giants, you had so many close games. Is it nice having a Rangers lineup that can put up so many runs on any given night? And he chuckled about that. And he said, yeah, part of him did miss the torture and stuff like that. The first thing he said was point out that they got shut out by the A's, 2 days prior. So classic Bochy there.
What do you think of the Rangers? Real quick, you think they're actual World Series contenders?
The offense is that's a World Series offense. You got a World Series caliber manager. I think the Astros are still a very dangerous team. The Orioles look like a very dangerous team. But if you're talking about just kind of having that savvy leadership atop your team, Rangers and Astros look as good as any with, Dusty Baker, which, of course, how fun it would be for Giants fans to watch Bruce Bochy and Dusty Baker duke it out in the ALCS. Probably Bochy there. Because, Bochy actually won a title with the Giants, whereas Dusty didn't. And 2, I mean, as much as I love Dusty, the Astros still have that taint of the cheating scandal that I think, and I mean, whereas, again, hey, if you're going to cheat, do it against the Dodgers. I don't care. But at the same time, I feel like the baseball fan in me probably still has to shame them a little bit.
Wait, the Dodgers who extended their NL West lead?
Yeah, 8.5 up. But remember, just like the 1971 Giants hit 204 over 27 games, you're going to win the division. But I do want to talk about, the Bochy versus Kapler dynamic. And you always say you never want to be the guy after the guy. And so that's a really tough situation for Gabe Kapler to be in. This had to be a weird weekend for Gabe Kapler, right?
Absolutely. It had to be a weird weekend. I mean, you're looking over at the guy whose shadow casts, miles long in Bruce Bochy, and universally was loved. Not early on, but obviously when you're the guy that hangs that first banner for this team, you're going to be loved forever. He did it 3 times, 3 different center fielders, 3 different aces, 3 different closers, right? That's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Yeah, I think it was really hard for Gabe Kapler this week. And I also think it's a lot harder when your team isn't very good in terms of top to bottom. Brandon Crawford's 2 for his last 22. He's got 16 hits in his last 97 at-bats.
Yeah.
Not good. Lamont Wade has not looked good lately. Been really up and down. He had a great series against the A's last week, and it's been since then. JD Davis, you know what I mean? The guys who are carrying this team have not been good. So
and that reflects poorly on Gabe Kapler.
But it's not his fault. He's not the one going up there getting at bats. Slater has come back down to earth.
Mm-hmm. No, there's really no one in this lineup you can trust right now. And yeah, that does make it difficult for Gabe. Friday night, you could really see it on his face. He looked defeated on Friday night. And I think
I mean, the fans are cheering for Bochy.
Yeah, and I think that had to grate
celebrating
on him a little bit, understandably so. It's tough. I mean, but I look, if there's ever a reason, if you're Gabe Kapler, to still not feel too down on yourself, it's just remember that it took this fan base a long time to truly embrace Bruce Bochy.
Agreed.
I mean, I was out on Bochy for the longest time. I wanted someone who's going to play younger guys, and Bochy just really wasn't doing that. For me, and I think a lot of other Giants fans, any moment of doubt that you had in Bruce Bochy was the Don Mattingly double mound visit in July of 2010. I think if you were a doubter of Bruce Bochy at that point, you could not be anymore, because he did what you want every Giants manager to do. He made the Dodgers look stupid on their own field, and he got Mattingly on a technicality, and then it was like, okay, I'm gonna ride with this dude, and ride with this dude we did. You know, it could be something as small as that changes things. Again, Gabe Kapler, Bruce Bochy, they're two very different people. You know, the whole Bochy manages with the gut. Gabe doesn't, because Gabe doesn't have a gut. But the point is, like, if you can't, I don't think you can compare the intuitions of these two, because Bochy has 20 plus years of experience on Gabe Kapler. And that's just, there's nothing that Gabe could do about that other than just manage more games.
Breaking news for your boy Farhan. This is Andrew Bagley, hearing that the Giants have DFA'd outfielder Luis Gonzalez. Got caught up in a numbers game with so many outfielders on the 40-man. Lots of candidates to be called up today. Newcomb, Fitzgerald, Carmaggio, obviously Harrison. Wade Meckler was another name that people are referencing. Wow.
Oh, no.
What do you think of that? Luis Gonzalez, DFA'd.
Oh, no. Anyway, back to what we were saying about Bochy and Kapler.
So you don't care at all?
I could not care. Okay, that's great. That's one less dude who doesn't know how to run the bases on this team. Luis Gonzalez, I didn't even know he was still on the team, to be honest. Like, the fact that, like, he was on the IL and people were talking about, what was it, Farhan said before the All-Star break, oh, he could be a plan in the second half. Like, that was one of those, like, I had to stifle a laugh, because, like, come on, man, that's more ridiculous than you believing in the pitching depth. So, all right, you know what? Hey, I mean, we're not going to try and force the Luis Gonzalez experience anymore. I'm happy about that. Does Tyler Fitzgerald get called up? Sure, that'd be really cool. I think that'd be a good defensive help there. I know he's been swinging a hot stick lately. Wade Meckler, though, every single prospect nerd who I talk to is got nothing but good things to say.
Okay, explain to people who he is, where's he from, what positions.
I think he's in like the low A or double A right now. I think he's an outfielder. It's just, from what I've heard, I don't know a whole lot about him, other than the dude's got a really good bat. He plays really well, and he's everybody's sleeper prospect in the Giants farm system. So that's all I really have to say about Wade Meckler now. I'd have to talk to someone who's more in the know about Wade Meckler to get more out of him. That might be a good question for Mark DeLucci with Fan Nation. He knows this farm system like the back of his hand. So, but yeah, Wade Meckler, that's a name to keep an eye on there. So